So welcome to the Slack Chat podcast. It's basically going to be two guys who are talking about Slackware Linux, really, and in particular the Slackware ARM port and the ecosystem and the community that's going to build around it. I'm Stuart Winter, the platform architect for the Slackware ARM port, and we've got Phil. Phil maintains the SAPI, which is the Slackware ARM on a Raspberry Pi. Phil, do you want to tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, thanks for the kind introduction, Stuart. The SAPI project, yes, that's a project that I maintain. It exists for the purpose of installing Slackware ARM on the Raspberry Pi ARM devices. And that's the sole reason why I do what I do.
So how this has come about is that Phil and I have been in contact for a number of years, and because the project, the Slackware ARM project itself is a hobby project and it just covers what I'm interested in. So Phil's project is to fill that particular niche. It's like an extension, really, isn't it?
Yes.
And so this podcast is really about, we ended up talking about some ideas. Some of it was to do with Slackware, some of it wasn't. And it occurred to me that this could actually be a podcast, because I don't think there's anything like this in the Slackware community. So we just thought, yeah, why not? Let's talk about it. Some people might find it interesting, and some of them won't. Well, I guess what we'll end up talking about, we've got no particular agenda. We've got some ideas in the back of our minds, some topics and things like that. But we thought we'll just spend maybe 30, 40 minutes at some sort of regular cadence, maybe once every couple of weeks, or something like that, and just put some stuff out there as an extension to the community. Because I don't think a lot of people really spend time, really know what it's like to be doing open source development. There's a lot of users, but the user to developer ratio is, really quite heavily skewed. And so we sort of thought it'd be quite interesting to show some insights and just have some conversations. And because we both enjoyed talking about this the other day, so this is how the podcasts begin, really. So Phil, we were just talking about this before we came on air, if you want to call it that. And Phil was thought we'd start off by talking about the roots of the Slackware ARM project in particular. Yeah. I don't know if anyone's really interested in it.
My question for you, Stuart, would be, why Slackware? Out of all the distributions that are available, why Slackware in particular?
All right. Well, I can answer that one. I've answered that one before. There is actually a quote. There's an interview with me back many years ago in one of the Slackware magazine, one of the Linux online magazines things, and it says that I learnt more using Slackware in 2 weeks than I had using Red Hat in years. And I hadn't embellished that. It was actually truth. I mean, so I got the Burke's CD-ROM, I think it's called, in university, and then installed it on a 486 I bought from a computer fair with some guys who introduced me to Linux and got me working in the ISP kind of arena.
Yeah.
They taught me to computer thing when I was at uni because they had a car and had jobs and I didn't. And they're a few years older than me, and introduced me to that. One of them was a Slackware user who got me into Slackware, and one of the guys who used to run an ISP, the technical director of an ISP, was a Slackware user, and the entire ISP ran Slackware. So I had a shell account on one of his servers and found Slackware that way, and then got the Burke CD-ROM and installed it for myself. And then just found, my God, I'm actually learning something here. That was what really struck me. I'm actually learning how Unix works, not about really how Slackware. So then I started playing around with Stellaris boxes at university, managed to have some access on there, to do various things on there. You'd be surprised universities didn't patch a lot. So so I ended up doing that, and I really learned more using Slackware because I had to. I think you and I talked about this the other day. You're basically forced to, because by virtue of the fact there's nothing that holds your hand. You install it, which doesn't hold your hand very much, and then it boots into a root login prompt. Or, that's it, right? So you're like, well, what do I do now? There's not even a graphical thing. So you have to actually learn a lot of commands. And by doing so over the course of many years, you learn how systems are put together. And Unix itself is a giant system. And once you understand, even on a surface level, once you understand the basics of like how to pipe stuff into grep and put it into sed, open up another shell, how does exec work, things like that, then you start to understand how computers work. And so I think it's a beautiful introduction to be able to really get I don't like the analogy, but like close to the metal, if you like. But the metal, you never really leave that proximity. You're always face to the plate because it makes you do that. But that's, I mean, in some respects, that's one of the beauties of Slackware. It's also, in some respects, one of the things that holds it back in some respects. But it's, again, and I say that in the sense of, if you go to, because I've run Slackware at ISPs, I had to write my own orchestration scripts to bring up packages, restart services. But I enjoyed doing that, and I had time to do it, and I learned a lot. But so as you get older, you don't really have that luxury, and you kind of think, well, I've got other things to do. I'd rather just use Chef or Puppet or something else that's got hooks into Debian. It's got pre-built hooks into Slack, where someone's done the work for me. So you have to kind of be mindful of that and say, well, it's useful for certain things. It gives me very much power, but with that power, you also have to do a lot of building yourself in some respects. So but it's a case of what the market is. What's the actual use case, and that goes back to why do you want to use Slackware? Why? Because one of the reasons is for me anyway, is that it is that control. For example, I know that when Slackware 15 comes out, I don't have to learn anything new. I'm not interested in, hang on, that's not right to say. I'm obviously interested in the distribution, so I wouldn't have spent 20 years maintaining a port of it.
Yeah.
But so I'm interested in that. But I know that I know that I can upgrade my 14.2, move the home directory back, copy a few of the config files that I've manually edited. And I even know I can probably put the config files straight in without even looking at them. I don't, nothing's moved. I just know I can have the base operating system is the same, and I get the latest software. Slackware has tons more software than it ever did, but loads of it has been added in recently. So it has, and which is particularly useful for DevOps, for example. If you worked in as a profession, I have to do stuff. Well, I have to. I work with the architects and developers at some of the big fashion companies and whatnot, and I work with people who work in operations team and developers and architects. And how do they orchestrate their system? Well, they use what's called DevOps, which is actually really a bunch of tools and a bunch of methodologies rather. And so, I know that with the DevOps, most of it's written around Python, lots of it's Python framework, and lots of it's aimed at Unix or Linux actually. So, and Slackware, for example, has a bunch of Python packages. They just allow you to install these tools pretty easily, which you couldn't have done even with 14.2. So there is actually a place for it. And for example, I run a Slackware VM in order to do that and show customers, because it's easier for me to do than anything else. So I use it there, for example. There's where I use it. But I know that I can upgrade my desktop machine, my server, and I don't have to relearn the operating system. You see what I mean? So Slackware is more about it.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really that. I'm not interested in having to relearn an operating system, because I want to use the latest software, and I want an operating system that's still maintained and developed, but it doesn't have to, it's not revolutionary every single time. In fact, it's an evolution. So, Pam and Kerberos turn up in Slackware at some point pretty soon. And that is a great thing, because you can actually now easily use it. Whilst you can easily use it. For example, when I was at Red Hat, I had a Slackware box. This is not a secret. Everyone knew that I actually ran Slackware when I worked for Red Hat for 6 years. That was my desktop machine. It was a Slackware box, and I hacked it in to make it work with the corporate network. And I probably if I went back there, I would be like, "You're not doing that anymore."
You would have probably been able to do it with any other distribution, but with Slackware. You mentioned the overall control that it affords you, and yes, anything's possible. It is one of the beauties of the system, is that it doesn't do anything for you. It's very limited in functionality for what it actually does without asking you, and you have to tell it what to do. The learning curve is certainly a lot steeper than
it's
any
more of
other.
a cliff, isn't it? Really, the learning cliff.
Yeah.
With an overhang.
I rarely use the desktop in Slackware for anything. Usually it's when a user who thinks they've installed SAPI, which is something I'll get onto a bit later, but they say, "Oh, I've installed SAPI and the desktop's got this problem. How do I fix it?" And it's absolutely beyond me, because I rarely use the desktop. But yeah, the certainly the command line functionality is awesome because you get to learn it very quickly, because it does depend on you knowing what to type in order to get the
Yeah.
results you expect.
You just hit the nail on the head for me, and I forgot to. You maybe remember what I forgot to say earlier when you asked me. And for me, I used to use the BBC. I actually really came into computers with the BBC Micro. So that was in the. You may know because you're because we're both obviously from the UK. If you can't tell by the accents. And the BBC Micro was. We have a company. What do you call the BBC? They're like the state
BBC,
broadcaster, aren't they? Oh no,
BBC.
I mean the BBC's like the state broadcaster. That's what you call them, isn't it? They're the state broadcaster.
Yeah, the machines were made by Acorn before they were known as Acorn,
Oh,
and
I know. Oh, yeah.
endorsed by the BBC.
That's endorsed. That's it. They were endorsed by the
Yeah.
BBC. So they're called BBC Micros.
Well, it's actually Eben Upton, the co-founders of the Raspberry Pi. He approached the BBC and said, "Look, we're really interested in marketing this product, and we love what the BBC did back in the 80s. How about putting your name on this?" And they said, "No, thanks. We're not interested in computers." So they missed out. I mean, just imagine if the BBC had have said yes, they'd have been onto a winner.
Oh yeah, totally. But mind you, I think that ship sailed. No one connects BBC with computers anyway, did they? Apart from the fact that it was a BBC mic. Anyway, anyway, get back to the point. The thing was, so when I was at school, I had the BBC Micro, and that was a command line interface. That's all it was. I mean, you had some software like Paint software, and it was just a program you loaded by typing in load or chain, whatever it was. So I got started there, which is where ARM came in. That's where ARM came from.
Yeah,
it came from the Acorns, the Acorn RISC machines, and
I had an Archimedes.
yeah, that was ARM.
Yeah,
that was an ARM chip, probably ARM V2 or something. And so it came from there. And basically, the reason how that's connected to Slackware is because I really enjoyed sitting in front of the computer, knowing I could make it do stuff, and then I could write in BASIC. Because the BASIC was very, very fast, and even on the strong ARM RISC-V, it was in the cache, so BASIC would run like as fast as a compiled C program, so it was incredibly fast. And I enjoyed that sort of sense of just typing stuff in, and so I really like that. And Slackware is constant like that. Like I have like 20, how many shell accounts terminal windows? There are like 30 terminal windows open. Most of them are root prompts. And I just like the fact that I can tell a computer what to do. It goes and does it, and if it's going to take me ages, I'll write a script to do it.
Yeah.
And then the operating system just keeps itself out of the way. It doesn't come and start bothering me with stuff. It doesn't get on my nerves. It doesn't create a drama. Like it's a no drama operating system. I mean, you can make it dramaful if you go and like break it. But that does. It's like anything that comes with a trade off. You have to do sometimes a lot of work to have that control. I think that's one of the trade-offs of using it. But for example, you could go and have a ton of shell accounts open. Shells open inside Red Hat, inside of Ubuntu. But suddenly you try to do something, and it's like, did you really mean to do rm-rf? I remember when I first did that at Red Hat, but I said, well, yes, that's why I typed it in. Like it had some script in there to catch it.
Yeah.
They'd wrapped the rm command. I was like, but I just typed it in. Of course, I meant it. And then it said, you need to use sudo. What do you mean you need to use sudo? I'm root. There's none of that business going on. I just do what I tell you. And I don't like that safety net that was in there because it was irritating. And Slackware doesn't have that. I remember one of the guys actually at Red Hat, when I was there, I was practicing the Slackware FOSDEM talk on the Slackware packages. I organised some muffins and some coffee in one of the Red Hat meeting rooms and invited loads of my colleagues in training, in support, tech support, sysadmin. Can you come and listen to my Slackware presentation, please? Because I need to practice it. And I've never told anyone that before. I had loads of people and they were like, oh, that's really interesting, Stuart. Well, how do you do this in Slackware? What about if you delete bash in Slackware? I said, then you've really screwed it up. And they were like, well, but in Red Hat, I know, this is Slackware. You've got to be in control. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, it was a really good conversation, actually. It's a good preparation for the FOSDEM thingy jig. So I think I can't really answer that question anymore. I think that's, for me, is that pretty much the same for you?
It was a strange journey. I was working as a manager for a VISP back in 2001 and used Red Hat for about 2.5-3 years. And when I say used, I mean point and click. So I never really got into the inner workings of the Linux system. It was all interfaces and dialogue pages that weren't dialogues, they were just buttons that you clicked. And then a friend of mine came to me and said, you really want to try Slackware? And I said, well, what's Slackware? Oh, Slackware is a system that's not like any other Linux system. It's the most Unix-like system you'll find. I thought, Unix, I don't want to know about Unix. Because it all seemed like NASA rocket science. However, he did manage to convince me to install Slackware on one of my computers. I remember that first week when I'd installed it. I broke it every single day. So we installed it on a Monday, and by the Friday I broke it every single day. And my friend turned around to me and said, "Look, if you break it again," because he was fixing it for me every time I broke it.
Ah, I
And he
see.
said, "If you break it again, you're going to fix it yourself." And I said, "Well, you told me that Slackware is stable and secure, and how is it breaking so easy?" And he just simply said, "Because you don't know what you're doing."
Pretty
And
direct, huh?
that was like a slap in the face. I mean, and he said it like a slap in the face. And what he really meant was, educate yourself. This isn't pointy clicky land.
Right.
In fact, we had a conversation where he said, everything that you do will be typed in at command line. And I said, well, why can't I just point and click? It's easier. And he says, Slackware is not easy. Use Slackware, you will learn Linux.
Do
You
you know
will learn
though?
all the
Can I
traditions, and you will learn all the standards because Slackware adheres to them. Now, to be honest, Stuart, at that time, I'd never heard of GNU. I'd never heard of the GPL. I didn't know what half of this stuff was. So it really didn't mean a lot to me. However, that's not important. What I did was I stuck with it. I learned the system, and what I was doing was breaking it. I stopped all that, and I went on to Slack docs, and I read a lot of that stuff. And there was the Slackbook project, which I found absolutely invaluable. That information was what taught me how to use Slackware.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and also my friend who was really, really into Slackware, his help and advice meant that I wasn't making mistakes. And like you say, the ways of doing things you really have to learn, and you don't just click a button that does something for you. You have to type that command in, and if you're interested enough, you investigate what the options are,
Yeah.
and you get to learn through using, which is what Slackware is all about. I've said for many, many years that Slackware is the best educational tool for Linux without equal. And yeah, I stick by that. I don't think there's any other system which can offer you that kind of education. But
If you,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
that's the basics of how I got into Slackware.
I can tell. I totally agree with you, I agree with you because I've had that's my personal experience. For example,
Yeah,
I went to when I was at university. We had to do. I guess you're the same. I haven't asked you about it before, but when I was younger, a lot younger, I used to go and install lots of different Linux distributions. Mostly not because I was trying to compare them. It's just because I wanted to see how other people had set up the system. Because this is the thing, right? You can read the documentation, and that's all very well and good, but to really think through what these options mean, like what if I set up my system like this, how does it work in reality? What does it actually do? What does it let me do? What does it not let me do? You really can't do that. You have to see what someone else's work to go, oh, so if I said it like that, that's pretty damn good actually. Like it's like you want to go around, and it's like going to IKEA and going, oh yes, if you put this thing together, these different ideas together, my kitchen could look like that. I quite like that. It's a nice idea. Like
yeah.
some of it's I did it that way around to take all the good ideas and then bring them back to Slackware. At least the way I'd set it up. And so I said that because one of the things that I could do when I was at university and other things, we had the course I did was like network management and support, and because the guy that ran it, the lecturer, was also one of the network admins, I think he was moonlighting or something, and he had he was like a BSD guy, free BSD guy, because the university ran on free BSD apart from some Novell NetWare here and there, but the proper infrastructure was like all the public DNS servers and whatnot were all free BSD, and so he gave us examples to do on free BSD. So of course, because I've used Slackware for so long, I just went, well, I don't know, I could probably do this in Slackware. Yeah, there we go. That's basically the same. Okay, and because it had a bash shell in FreeBSD, I mean, so that's always the same. It's just that the tooling names, but it's a Unix system, right? So the Linux has like the tar is different to the one on Solaris. The one on Solaris does virtually nothing, which is why there's an entire group of people would port all the GNU utilities and stick them on Solaris and go, hey, new world arrived. Look at your old ancient junky stuff. Look at the one that we can do all this stuff. Here's the kitchen sink version of tar. And people did that, right? So, but even without that stuff, you can go, okay, well, this command doesn't exist. Oh my God, I've got to actually build a version of -x in this utility and piping off anyway. But my point is that you take all of that knowledge that you learn with Slackware and you can actually go into other Unix systems and use it pretty fluently immediately, even though it's Linux under there, because the actual user land that's what people mean when they say it's most Unix like. The user land, as in like the RC scripts, the way it's set up, the config, the way things are put in the file system, they're very the way you touch it is a Unix touch. So yeah, that's, if you want to learn that stuff, which I happen to really enjoy, I love Unix. I think that it's the best thing. On the other hand, if you just want to use a tool where you could use something like Windows, where you could just use Windows instead, you might find it easier.
Every software has its uses.
Indeed, I run Windows on my media machine because it's the easiest thing to use, the easiest thing to set up. And we use talking to on a MacBook. Well, that's the company's one, but my desktop is actually a Slackware desktop. But
well, I don't have any Slackware desktops, but I just have a home Linux server which runs Slackware, and I'm not telling you how many Raspberry Pis I have.
I don't want to know. That would upset me to hear how many you have.
It's embarrassing, but
we should talk another time, next time, about why the Raspberry Pi is not supported by ARM, perhaps.
Yeah, well,
not
now. That's basically how I got into doing what I'm doing now. Slackware is something that I really enjoy. It was not very long after I started getting serious with it that I realized I am going to learn a lot from this. I am going to learn things that I would never even knew existed if I hadn't have used Slackware. Simple things like WPA supplicant, for example, or cron jobs. I got into it was the second or third week I was compiling my own kernels.
Are you trying to say that you basically, because of Slackware and the fact you need to do so, you need to work on it to get it working, you've actually learned a lot about technology itself and what's around? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, the things that you come across when using Slackware, and of which there are millions, most of that is covered over by a GUI or something masking it. So you don't actually know what's going on in the background. When I first looked at a wireless network, which was in the late, I think it was 2008 or 9, and I came across the WPA supplicant. I thought, I've never even seen this before. How likely would I have come across this if I'd have just used Ubuntu, where you click on the wireless icon and it connects you? Type in your password, there you go, thank you very much. Slackware's not that accommodating, and I'm really, really glad it isn't, because you wouldn't learn how it works if Slackware didn't require you to know how it works and ask you to do it. You wouldn't learn.
Well, that was my point, though. So, my question was, rather my mental thinking behind it was that you come across WPA supplicant, but what does that really mean? Well, it means you've learned more about what that type, you've come into contact with that specific technology, which, so then you could go, oh, that's interesting to me, I'll go and read a bit about it if you wanted to, or you had to. So you'd learn actually more technology just because you had to do some of the sort of, what really you could say is engineering work to make this work. People wouldn't normally say it's engineering work, but actually it is. If you think about as a job, okay, you need to go and set these servers up or set this laptop up for a corporate deployment. That's really is an engineering job. You have to make it so that you've got a deployable image on laptops, which part of it would be adding in your corporate Wi-Fi key, or not Wi-Fi key, like a certificate. So what I'm saying is I think actually Slackware. Sorry, I'm kind of aware. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. It's just that I'm just trying to say. Trying to understand what it gives you by coming into contact with these things. I'm just trying to say, is that what?
Yeah.
Yes,
it's fair comment, but you're looking at it from a slightly different angle than what I am. That's why I think you were looking at a different angle from what I am.
Oh, you just say that you just like learning stuff. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, you learn as you go. I mean, you remember when I first approached you and said, I need to get Slackware ARM on the Raspberry Pi, please help me.
Is that what you said?
And you said, roll your sleeves up and get ready for some hard work.
I did, didn't I?
Yes,
Something
those immortal words, which I quote often. And when somebody says to me, how do I do that? How do I make something like SAPI? Well, you roll your sleeves up and you get ready for some hard work.
Do you know what I like? One of the things I like about you, I reckon actually, I'm pretty certain, I'd totally forgotten I said that, but I thought to myself at the time, that's never going to happen. Well, because I know how much work it is, but here you are.
Here you are. Over the years, Stuart, not only you, but others as well, names will not be mentioned, they have contributed heavily towards the SAPI project. It would not be where it is today if it wasn't for the input and advice and experience of other Slackware users. And it's simple things. And one of the strengths of Slackware is the community. It has a wonderful community. And I don't want to get into details, but sometimes there's a lot of arguing and differences and opinions floating around. Well, in the Slackware community, there isn't. It's quite a sensible and mature environment. And there's very little indecision and undecisiveness, because Slackware is basically the rule book by which we use Linux. It's a very, I'm trying to think of a word, organised. It's a very organised affair. But that's not to say other Linux distributions don't have good communities. I just think that Slackware has a slightly more mature and level-headed one.
No, okay. I don't look too much at the community around it. I don't really have time. A little bit on the ARM stuff, but that's pretty much it.
I base my experience, because I'm in the yawning gulf between Slackware ARM and the Raspberry Pi, and it's an environment of unsupported software. So there are a few occasions where I'm doing what might be considered unorthodox means and methods to get the results. I'm not too hung up on that. I just want it to work.
I think that's a good time to end this particular episode of the podcast. I think I've enjoyed talking to you about this stuff. I think next time actually we can, even though we're not going to really have a sort of formal agenda, we should continue this particular topic, because it sounds like we're going to go into really into about the community and how the open source community actually works. Like what you're about to start leading there, I think. So we can pick that up afterwards on the next episode.
Okay, Stuart. Absolutely no problem.
Awesome. Well, let's call this one a day, and then we'll see you on the next episode.